Getting on. Hello and welcome to a new episode of Foodocracy for Her. This is where we speak to women entrepreneurs in the world of food. I'm Kalyan Karmakar. And today I've got guests whom I wanted to interview right since the start of the series. But at that time, I used to do it on Instagram Live way back in May 20. And I didn't know how to get two people on board, but now it's on Zoom. Even on Instagram, that's possible. So today I've got Punam Singh and Shilpa Sharma. Punam is in darker blue and
Hi.
on the top screen, and then she's joining in from Mumbai. Shilpa says she's in blue, and she's joining in from Gurgaon. So
Hi,
great to
hi
have you on
everyone.
board. And Shilpa and Poonam are the co-founders of the Mustard Restaurant, and which I must say, as an industry watcher, has been the restaurant has been one of the restaurants which have really sort of taken the Indian industry by storm over the past 5 years. It's been a rocky and tumultuous journey, not out of their choice, but because of the pandemic. But we are here today to talk about their journey and what are they doing going ahead. And I think that there's a lot for us to learn from them today, because when we do these chats, it's so much about learning about entrepreneurial journeys, and I think we have a lot to learn. But before that, I must say that Poonam and Shilpa have both had their own and rather distinguished professional careers, and I'm sure that there are things which they've learned from that, which have formed the base of what they're doing now. So before I get into the mustard story, I'm just going to quickly get a sort of feel from Poonam and then Shilpa about what they've been doing, and then we get into the mustard story. So Poonam, would you like to tell us about a bit about your journey in work, or maybe even going back a bit to like what you were studying, or it's your floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. I'm actually from Delhi, so I've done my hotel management from Pusa, and soon after joined Taj Palace in Delhi, part of the opening team. Was in F&B operations, and at that time, not there weren't too many girls who were really opting for this. It was primarily housekeeping or front office. So I was amongst the handful of people who opted for F&B operations, and loved every bit of it. I landed up spending about 11 years with them. That time, the whole idea was that I want to be the GM and I don't want to get married, and this is what I want to do. But then along came my husband who wooed me, and we moved to Bombay. He was with Tatas as well, and he got transferred to Bombay, and I moved with him. And even though I could have worked with the Taj out here, I decided not to because the hours were long, and unless your partner's from the same profession, which is why a lot of people actually don't land up getting married, a lot of women, unless you find somebody from the same profession who understands the long hours. So I decided not to join the Taj, and I was working for a club for a wee bit for 3 4 years. I was marketing a golf course, marketing an American club who wanted to come to India. So that pretty much gave me an understanding of Bombay, the landscape, because when you're in a sales and marketing kind of job, you go to all the nooks and corners, the lanes, and you get to know the city really well, as opposed to being in a confined place like a hotel or any other corporate job. Then kids happened. I've got two young daughters, so I took a sabbatical. And whilst I was doing that, I was doing education for youngsters in Australia and New Zealand, um, because my batchmates were, you know, professors in these colleges in Australia and New Zealand, and also residents. And they wanted to make it easier for people who were wanting to go there and sort of, set up this whole outfit. So I was helping them with Maharashtra and Goa, doing, lectures in colleges, telling them what it entails, how will, what will be their career graph. So that was again very interesting, but all in the hospitality space. And whilst I was doing that, this bug of being in retail hit me. And that time in 2004, 2003, retail was supposed to be the sunrise industry. It was getting more organized. A lot of people were looking at it differently, not like dukan hai, shopkeeper hai. It was getting a little more professional. And that's when I met Shilpa, who got FabIndia to Bombay, and she's the one who really recruited me for this Kala store. And from there onwards, our journey started. So we go way back in 2004. And I still remember, and I tell everybody this, I said, it was great to have her as a boss, as a mentor, because she was so secure. And every 2 months, she would tell me, please make me redundant. Please, get on with it. Don't take so long. You don't have the luxury of time of being one store manager, two-store manager. I want to do many, many things, So there was this excitement, everything building in her. And I'm saying, hey, God, like, don't leave Fab India, you can't do this to me. But she's just made sure that I sort of walked in her footsteps, took over from her so that she could grow and do whatever she needed to do. So this went on for about 8 years, and we were part of the growth journey at Fab India. When I joined, we were 11 stores. Shilpa will tell you, what her scene was. And by the time I left, we were about 165 stores. And that was like a tremendous learning. We were like mini sort of CEOs of our region, doing business development, total P&L responsibility, entering new markets. Very, very heady, very exciting, to be part of that. But then somewhere along the line, you also know that when you're sitting in Bombay, which is a region and not the head office, there's only that much that you can do. And for me to grow, to take over the country, I would have to, go move to Delhi, which wasn't an option. So it was just getting very repetitive. And that's when I decided to take a break. Well, it just so happened that Shilpa had also taken a break the previous year. So we set up our own retail consultancy, armed with all the knowledge that we'd gained over a period of time. And that's the entrepreneurial journey, which started in 2012. But before that happened, I actually joined Moshe's for a year
Oh,
because we got Moshe's to Kalagoda,
yes.
and always believed in doing destination stores, which you'll see those parallels, as we go along, that what we did
Yes.
with mustard. That time we had to really convince the management to do something like that, because they look at per square feet sales and say, does it really make sense? But for us, the idea was to make it a destination and make sure there's something for everyone. Whilst the women are shopping, the husband has some place to sit. So that was the whole idea. So every time I'd open a Fab India, I'd tell him to open one. And he said, if you believe so much in my brand, why don't you join me? And that's what I did for a year. Helped him in his expansion, opened Palladium, Juhu, couple of others. And after that, the retail consultancy happened. And whilst we were setting up a store for one of my clients in Goa, in the bungalow, I told her, go for it. The bungalow is beautiful. I'll subsidize the rent and I'll get you a cafe partner. And when I went looking for a cafe partner, I realized that in Goa, no one wants to scale up. Everyone's so happy with this one place that they have where they live upstairs, they come down with the dog and everybody, and they run the place. And because I'd already committed, I didn't know what to do. So I called up Shilpa and I said, look, this is where I'm stuck, and I think we should be doing the cafe ourselves. And she said, "Oh my gosh, but I don't have hospitality experience." I said, "But I've got more than enough for the two of us, and I'll extract my pound of flesh from you, even though you're sitting in Delhi." And that's how Mustard was born. It was meant to be a cutesy cafe serving soups and sandwiches, but it just got a life of its own. We started with one cuisine. First port of call was Bengali because it was so flavorful, so underexposed, and we didn't want to do the typical North Indian or South Indian cuisine. And just the way, in Fab India, it was about keeping the art and the craft and the artist alive. We wanted to do that with food. Because in 2014, when we set out to do mustard, that time everyone was into molecular gastronomy and everything
Oh,
was
yes. Yes.
easified and with nitrogen, or it was modern Indian, and somewhere the regional cuisine was getting lost.
True.
So mustard's endeavor was to showcase regional food in its purest form. Authentic is a very very difficult word to own because we don't know who first made the kosher mangsho, but yeah, so the whole idea was to make it as pure. And Shilpa will now continue and tell you how the French bit also came on.
No,
Over to
but it's fascinating because I was speaking to both of you about the fact that we've met many times and over dinners and over events and things like that. But it's only during these chats that we get to know. Because all I knew about you, Poonam, somewhere in my head was that you were part of Fab India. But
you.
I mean, this entire story, and I remember that cutesy cafe in Goa, and and we went there,
Right.
and the Bengali food was fairly authentic. I remember having it that time. And yeah, I don't know why I do many of these interviews wearing Fabindia shirts Somehow today I didn't, but this lamp is FabIndia.
Right.
That's competition. That's Bombay store. The table on which this is FabIndia. So
You can't
somehow,
escape.
they should be like sponsoring me. I mean, so their shirts so often. Yes, and the Kalakara store is also beautiful. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really something which I think Starbucks happened later over there, but I think these are sort of great examples. Like when I went to Istanbul, and since both of you are in retail, and I think we'd gone there in 2007 or 8, or maybe 9. I used to look at this Taksim area and where they've taken the entire Greek area and moved, converted completely into retail,
Right.
and with standardized lettering, colors, and stuff like that. And I used to wish that Mumbai would do something like that, and the store is an example of that. And like you're saying, Punam, I think that those of us who've actually been to the Mustard restaurant in its various avatars would see a bit of that. But with that, to you, Shilpa, I know you are also into travel and destination and all that, but
Yeah.
I'll let you speak for it. I don't know. Over to you,
Yeah.
Shilpa.
Okay, Kalyan. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for having us and for asking us to share our story. Yeah. At the outset, thank you very much for having us and for wanting to share our story, wanting to hear our story. And it's been wonderful hanging out with you at Mustard. Every time we did something exciting, your support has meant the world to us, Kalyan. So my story, in a nutshell, is that I'm a Bombay girl. I grew up in Bombay, and well, I lived in Bombay for the first 20 years of my career. Delhi's only a very recent, 12-year-old innings for me. But anyway, went to St. Xavier's, went to B school, started career in advertising, figured very quickly advertising was not my cup of tea, moved to brand, worked at Cadbury, met husband there, quit Cadbury, went to Marico, spent about 4 years, working with Marico. And then there came a time when I took a year off when my son was born in 1997. And I figured I didn't really want to go back into the corporate race. And roughly around that time, FabIndia was looking to open their store in Bombay. And a chance meeting with William where he asked me if I wanted to work with them. And I said, yes, I do. There was a little bit of for my family, there's a little bit of stigma attached to running a store. Like, okay, so yeah, so running a store in those days was not particularly the most exciting thing to do, right? You were chucking a career in sales and marketing. But I was
And that too in
determined. I
top
just wanted to
companies
be
like
the
Cadbury,
yeah,
Marico, like
yeah, yeah,
top
Marico.
top
Yeah, well,
companies.
that it took me like 3.5 years to get to the salary I was drawing at Marico. To get to that, and FabIndia is another story. But yeah, well, it was the most interesting time to be at FabIndia, to be part of that, their growth story. It became fairly evident to me and to the rest of FabIndia that I wasn't going to be happy being store manager for Mumbai for very long. And it just so happened that, William had just taken over the reins of the business from his dad. And I got to drive the whole FabIndia geographical footprint around the country.
Wow.
So Punam and I met in 2003, when the Kalagoda store was happening. But by then, I was in a bit of a role. I mean, I'd opened some 15 stores in other parts of the country. And then, from 1998 to 2007, I spent time building FabIndia's stores all over the country, opened about 92 stores and handed over contracts for about, 30 stores that would open over a period of time. But, there came an opportunity, there came a time when I got a bit tired of opening stores. And by then, Punam looked after the Western region, and there were many others looking after other parts of the country. And roughly around then, my husband had an opportunity in Delhi. And I moved to Delhi, to drive, buying and merchandising at FabIndia. Now, I figured very quickly, Kalyan, that there came a time in about a year and a half of being in Delhi, there came a time that my dreams and aspirations for the business became much bigger than the shoe I was wearing. And it was fairly evident to me that the company was still focused on, going to 300 stores. And I was like, I'm done with this growth story. I think the business is ready for a lot more. So anyway, it was evident to me that in about 2010, the time had come to move on to, paint another canvas. That's when I quit FabIndia, started, consulting practice, realizing that not working full time for an organization frees up so much of your time. And alongside the consulting practice, I set up a travel company called Breakaway, which was
Yes.
all focused on community-based interactions. So very immersive experiences, what we call beyond the brochure experience of India. Through craft and textile, through culinary experiences, and just a Rajasthan everyone knows of, and a Rajasthan that no one has ever talked about. So we'll take you to that Rajasthan, the Kutch that no one talks about, the Assam that no one talks about, like that.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, consulting is what I
And
was
which
doing,
year
and
was
while
this?
Punam was
Sorry,
finishing her,
which
this
year
was
was this?
2010 to 2012.
So still a bit ahead of his
While
time.
Punam was, yeah,
A bit ahead of his
yeah,
time.
yeah, it
Huh?
was. It was. I mean, the thing is that I just didn't want to be an also ran. I mean, that's
Hmm.
just really been my approach to, entrepreneurship. I don't want to do things that everybody else is doing because then there's really no point. There's always someone else who's got more money than you do, who'll shout out, louder than you can. And you'll be history. So I wanted to, and for me, this was like my approach to travel. This is how I like to travel. What's the harm? Let's try and get 5 people to go off on that trip, to pick your own apples, in Kotkai or in Thanedar, and then learn how to make, apple strudel and, apple buns and, those kind of things, right? All kinds of fun stuff. Anyway, this is the stuff that I was doing when a chance meeting with, my partner at Jaipur, Puneet Chawla, brought me to a space where there was lots of money and there was an e-commerce platform that somebody was wanting to set up. They just didn't know what to sell. And I had some ideas because I had these dreams I had for FabIndia. So I said, okay, I know what I want to sell, but I'm not about to stop my consulting practice or, give up on Breakaway. I'll give you 2 days a week of my time and let's see what we can do with it. So on 2 days a week of my time, I started to build Jaipur, and roughly then Punam quit Moshe's, and she said, "Listen,
So
what
do you
is
mean
this? You and I work so
Jaipur
well
as in
together."
the company, JYPOR?
That's right. Yeah, yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
so a lot of our cutlery of late is from Jaipur. Kainas is buying a lot of stuff from there. I think that I had biryani on a Jaipur plate today, and I actually have a Jaipur shirt as well. What are the chances I didn't wear that or the FabIndia one? I don't know what this is. No, I think this gap.
Never mind.
No, but we during the lockdown we've been buying a lot of Jaipur stuff,
Yeah.
crockery,
So
shirts.
yeah,
Kainas buys got a few stuff as well. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you're both all
No,
the brands
so
which you use.
yeah,
You've
that's
been a
very
part
good
of
to
that.
know. But
Yes.
see, you're a complete representation of the kind of audience we'd like to talk to.
Uh,
So anyway, so I started to build the Jaipur story, and alongside that, I was consulting, and roughly then Poonam had quit Moshe's, and she came to me and she said, "Listen, I mean, you and I work so well together, and I'd love to be able to work with you." And I was already like hugely stretched in like 3 different directions with consulting and Jaipur and Breakaway. And then Poonam, came on board, and then both of us, continued to consult for a while. But there came a time when we were raising, private equity money for Jaipur, and my angel investor turned around and said that, listen, if you're going to have to raise money, you better, pull out of 5 different pies that you've got your fingers into, and choose your priorities. And then I had to take a call to pull out of my consulting practice. That was about 2014. I'd announced that I was 2015 March, I was going to give up. And then, a chance conversation with Poonam, and actually, Freedom Tree, who we shared space with in Goa, was a consulting client. I mean, that's how we got to know her. And then,
we
um,
have their crockery, we have their pillow covers, we have their bed covers.
yeah,
Freedom Tea
yeah.
Bandra.
See,
Oh
all
God, is
these
it?
all these brands talk to you, right? So
Yes, yes. Oops, we lost Poonam. I'm going to pause recording. Okay, we are back. We had a few internet issues and things like that. What's very interesting is that Poonam's a Delhi girl living in Mumbai. Shilpa's a Mumbai girl living in Delhi, and that's this thing. So they got together. They made put mustard. And I remember earlier in the interview, Poonam said that she thought of regional Indian, brought in Bengali. Yay, Bengali. That's great. And then she looked at Shilpa and said, "Now you can ask Shilpa about the French part of it." So,
Yeah.
She's the co-founder, so she should tell you the rest of the story. You know,
no,
the other
but
Part of the
mustard
story.
had a very interesting thing that it was doing Bengali food, and we now know a bit about why they were doing Bengali, and they were doing French, which is a strange combination because multi cuisine in India means Chinese and Mughlai, and I want to know the thought process behind this because a successful brand always has a certain thinking behind it, a story behind it, what makes it unique. And this is unique as hell because I don't think there's ever going to be a Bengali and French restaurant ever again. And just to clarify, that it's not that the same dish had a bit of Bengali and a bit of French. They had two different menu lines, a bit like your Chinese Mughlai sort of thing. But go ahead, Shilpa.
Yeah, completely different menus. So no, just around the time that we were talking about wanting to do Bengali food in Goa because Goa didn't need yet another Goan food place, right? I mean, there was like thousands already. And in keeping with my commitment to do something vastly different from what anyone else had ever tried before, we had this whole idea around doing Bengali food. But Punam came up one day and she said, but Bengali can be a bit of an acquired taste because mustard is a sharp flavor. And Goa is such a transitionary space because there's tourists and there are people coming from all over, right? Within the country, outside the country. She said, um, we need to have an offering which kind of caters to every palate. Maybe there is a cuisine which will complement Bengali in a way that is far more neutral on the palate, but it can be part of the story. So we started to look at world cuisines, right? I mean, there was no other cuisine in India that would have helped our situation of, mustard, acquired taste, sharp flavors, and so on. We started to look at world cuisines and, there was, French right there because, I mean, she and I both traveled to France on vacation and know what the big deal about, moutard in France is. So yeah, we said, okay, why don't we do, French meets Bengali over mustard as an ingredient? And Kalyan, the point to be made over here is that neither Punam nor I are
Hmm.
chefs,
Hmm.
right? So here we were two crazy women who wanted to create a concept which nobody had ever heard about, and we didn't have a clue where our chefs were going to come from. And how that story unfolded also is another story, and I must take a minute to tell you
Yeah, I
that
wanted to
roughly
ask you
around the
about that
time,
because,
yeah,
and that's an interesting learning because both of you were like the business holders, and then you had
yeah,
two
yeah,
chefs, one professional,
yeah,
one
yeah,
not a regular chef, and both with
yeah,
strong
yeah.
points of view, and French and Bengalis, both very temperamental personalities. How
Yeah.
did you manage that? That's the sort of thing which a
I'll get
UN
back to you on that.
Secretary General.
I'll get back to you on that. I'll let Shilpa complete what she was saying.
Go ahead,
I
go
know.
ahead. So,
No,
folks, sometimes
so
Shilpa's face freezes, but we'll just go ahead with it because I don't want to
yeah,
keep
just go
interrupting her.
ahead. As
Yeah, I
long
don't
as
want to
you're
get,
getting the
yeah.
voice, it's okay.
No, no,
Doesn't
you
matter.
loud and clear. Go
So,
ahead.
I mean, October 2014 is when Poonam and I are having this conversation and wanting to do, French meets Bengali over mustard as an ingredient, and we have no chef in sight. First week of December, I trot off to the Hornbill Festival in Nagaland. Just me and my wanderluster, approach to life. And on my way back from the Hornbill Festival, I stayed at a campsite in Dimapur. And Pritha was a guest being hosted by, Indranil and Sony, who were running a festival called Exotic Echoes. I remember that. And over a really, really shitty meal at that campsite, Pritha and I started to talk.
Uh,
And she said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I run Breakaway, and I'm a consultant to various businesses in fashion and lifestyle, and I'm building Jaipur.com." Oh, how interesting! And what do you do? Oh, I write for Outlook, the Outlook magazine. I'm a journalist, but I'm actually also a food anthropologist. Okay, I'd never heard about food anthropologists ever. Food historian is what she meant, right?
yeah.
And then she said, "Oh, I've just come back from having done a festival around Wajid Ali Shah's, cuisine in Lucknow." And that kind of piqued my interest, right? And I said, "Oh, how interesting. My friend and I are thinking of setting up a French meets Bengali restaurant in Goa." She's like, "Oh, how interesting." But we didn't really get past that conversation, right? We just spoke over there. We exchanged numbers, promised to stay in touch. And, one thing led to another. I went out to Marjuli and so on and came back to Bombay. And I called Poonam and I told her about Pritha. And she said, oh, we should talk to her. Maybe she'd be interested. So we picked the phone on Pritha. And I remember Pritha coming to Poonam's home in Bombay Central, and doing trials of Bengali food in Poonam's kitchen.
Yeah.
Wow.
And us sitting around the table and having conversations about, what is it that we want to do, which is not something that O Calcutta is already doing.
Exactly.
Because O Calcutta was already there,
And very
And we were
established.
like, no. Yeah. We want to be home style. We want to be able to bring you food the way, your grandmother made it at home. And honestly, aside from the fact that our whole approach to cuisines was this whole business of bringing two completely diverse cuisines together and not fusion, but very independent menus. It was all home style. So it was not fancy fluff. I mean, I've always gone and told people that, this is a very, very honest approach to food. I mean, Poonam talked about the fact that, molecular gastronomy and, nitrogen infused, food as was being done by some people really was a fad. But we were like, we have to do food home style in a way that no one else does. So that's really how it all started. And Poonam met Greg at a Christmas party in Goa because she was also helping Freedom Tree run their operations in Goa in the first year. She got introduced to Greg at a Christmas party, and I mean, as the rest, as we she'll say, is history. Pritha curated the Bengali menu, and Greg came and curated the French menu. And there was a lot of powwow. I mean, not just between the two of them, but between all four of us, because eventually we always got told, "But you don't know food the way we do." You know. But
That's
yeah, it
the,
was fun
the creative servicing fights since you've been in advertising for a short while.
in advertising. Yeah.
What Greg's condition was on coming on board.
Whose condition?
Gregory.
Gregory, the French chef.
I'll only come on board if you give me a separate kitchen with a wall dividing the two kitchens, a separate refrigerator, separate pans, and a separate team. He says, because I'm not going to be there 24 hours. And I certainly don't want coriander and red chili in my food and saying that this is French food. We actually had to build a wall and figure out how.
In Goa. And it wasn't that big a space.
In Bengali, how will we coordinate the pickup and what needs to be done? And we didn't have fancy technology at that time, which could take care of all this, and nor did we, have the money to spend on that technology. So that's how the journey started. And the first time when Pritha was doing some food trials, and Greg just happened to come in, and he comes back holding a pan, and he says, "Who took it?" And Pritha, I did. And he says, "No, you can't." And then she comes to me and says, "I'm sorry, I cannot work like this." He says, "Who is he to tell me?" So those are the powwows that we had to do with. But I got later told that, when we didn't have place for somebody who wanted to eat at Mustard, we just opened, people were wanting to experiment, come. And this guy comes and tells me, "What do you expect? French and Bengali? Both of you have chips on your shoulders." And that's why
we do.
You guys think you're culturally superior, intellectually superior. What are you doing with two cuisines?
You should have done Spanish and Punjabi. Would have been simpler. Spanish and Punjabi would have been a lot simpler.
And then they asked us, "Who's Bengali out of the two?" And we said, "Oh, no." We're both Punjabi. And I'm like, really, the mouth just falls open. They're agape. And you don't know what we are doing with these two cuisines. But yeah.
But I must say that, I've been trying a Bengali food right from the beginning in Goa, and then in Mustard in Mumbai, different formats. And then there were later different chefs and festivals. And it's always been very, very, very spot on, home-like and this thing. When I had the French food the first time, I'd been to France when I was 6 months old. So I had no real context. Of course, I'd gone to Montreux and all that on the Swiss side. But I remember later when he opened in Mumbai, Kenaz and I, my wife and I, we'd had almost a 7-day, almost an eating holiday in Paris after joining her at the Cannes Ad Festival. So by then one had pretty strong, associations or memories with French food. And then when we tried various things at your place, whether it was the crepes or there was something with duck meat and then some of the desserts and all that, you know that the flavors were very spot on. And even though it was perhaps presented in a slightly prettier manner than the Bengali food, but it was presented like food. which is how food is in France and Paris as well. It's not theater. It's just meant to be enjoyed. And
Want to do French Nouvelle where you have a large plate and a little bit of food and
yeah,
we were very clear it was going to be wholesome, home style, unpretentious food. But the two cuisines are not as polarized as people think it is, because I'm sure you know that Bengal was colonized by the French much before the Britishers came, which was like
yes.
17th century. And you just have to look at Pondicherry to know that how the two cultures have coexisted and done pretty well for themselves. The other thing we were told was that both of them use every part of the vegetable, from the root, the stem to the seed. We've got the mochar and the peel, so there's zero wastage when it comes to both the cuisines. And
Even animals. Yeah, I mean, even meat and fish. In fact, Anthony Bourdain had written about that in his book, A Cook's Tour. I mean, now that he brought up the point, that in the US, people would go to departmental stores and buy specific cuts of chicken or whatever, which is sterilized packets. But he said that and he was talking about France and the use of offal and every part. So, I mean, it's this entire head to tail it's very much French and Bengali and Indian for that matter.
and both of them eat their food course by course. Even Bengali,
Yes,
they never
yes.
eat their meats. They start with the bitter, go on to the sour, and which is how the plating, the platter that we did came about, and that's something that Shilpa had really worked on. So Shilpa, maybe you'd like to talk about
But the
why.
biggest, but the biggest commonality is biggest commonality is the chip on the shoulder.
And love for soccer, high on beauty. I mean, there's just so many. There's just so many. The list is endless.
So, the thing is that we were talking about two cuisines which are as different from each other as can be, right? And if, let's say, you and Kenaz came over for a meal and one of you wanted to eat French and one of you wanted to eat Bengali, the food couldn't arrive at the table looking like it's come from two different planets. So the whole approach to plating of Bengali had to be conceived in a manner that it could coexist on the same table along with a beautifully plated French dish. And that's what really led us to, and we really, and Punam and I are known to sweat the small stuff. But I've always believed that God is in the detail, as is the devil. So if you have to plate Bengali and do justice to really the whole experience, which has to stay with you much longer than the time you spend in the restaurant, there is a lot of thought and attention that needs to go into plating, and which is what we did, and we thoroughly enjoyed it, because also that approach didn't exist. To stick everything into a thali and put it on the table was an easy thing to do, but a thali can't be sitting next to grilled fish in hollandaise sauce, plated the way it does. So that's really how we went about doing these things. So, but Kalyan, we ended up with a concept where people came to us and said, you can't waste a concept like this to Goa. You need to be in like Bombay and Delhi and Bangalore. That's where the real following will be. And we were like, oh, but we don't have the money. Where's it going to come from? How are we going to do this? And then there were like two, patrons and lovers of mustard, from on their innumerable trips to Goa, who came forth and said, okay, if you ever decide to come to Bombay, we'll help you. And that's really how we did, mustard in Bombay in August of 2018.
Are they anonymous donors or partners, or can
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, I want to make 2 points. This thing which you said about plating, it never struck me when I went there to eat in the restaurant. And to me, that's the success of what you did. That it seems so natural. And the other thing which struck me was that V Sangvi's often made this point about Indian chefs in London who were presenting Indian food plated in a French way, and I've seen that in places like Vivek Singh Cinnamon Library and all that. So you didn't do that. You didn't take Bengali food and take a big white plate and put the luchi in the middle and a chola dal in a little swirl. I think the plating was the way perhaps Bengali food would be plated if you were to come to our house. I mean, I'm saying by mood, not by dexterity.
Yeah.
And the other thing, like you said, I mean, if you look at the modern palette, even of a Bengali thing, and definitely a couple like Anaz and I, she's being Parsi, I mean, you would sometimes want a bit of a Western influencing, a bit of a Indian influencing, so that the complementing flavors made sense. Which brings me to my next question, and which you've also given the segue to, which is you move from Goa to Mumbai, which people would say is the toughest things of people who understand cricket. Gregory wouldn't, but it's like going from maybe club football to Eden Gardens, where you're playing against either Australia or Pakistan.
Oh,
How did
absolutely.
how did that happen?
Poonam, you want to take that question? Yeah.
Yeah, she's a Bombay girl. No, she's Delhi girl with Bombay. Yeah, and
So, like I said, so mustard in Goa was a dream. It was something that we did out of passion. It wasn't going to be. We didn't think it was going to evolve and get a life of its own, and it'll become one of our core, not businesses, but core passions and things that we do. So every time I'd come back to Bombay, I'd get a call or a comment to say that would they like to open in, say, Bangalore? Would they like to open in Tokyo, in Canada? I'm like crazy, and I would call up Shilpa and say, what is it that we're doing? I'm like, why are people going hysterical? Why do they feel that it needs to be showcased in other parts of the country and the world? Maybe there is some merit in it. But like she said, we really didn't have the money and we didn't think of ever coming to Bombay till we found these two people who said that whenever you're ready, please do reach out to us. So the first 6 months, first 1 year, we thought it was just a novelty and something different, and it'll pass off. But when that continued, when the rhetoric continued, and when we kept getting requests, so it's one thing getting requests and getting feedback. The other is to really put the money where your mouth is, right?
yes.
So when we found these two people and they were willing to do, so we did some back of the envelope numbers, and they seemed to be on board. We went around looking for a place in Bombay. We had zero credibility in terms of being able to pay. Nobody wants to give you a place on rent where the rents are so high. And we got, told off many a times. Some people said, have an escrow account and give us rent upfront for 6 years. And I said, you must be like crazy.
No.
Why would we do that? So finally, we found, and since I've always lived Midtown, I wanted to open something either in South Bombay or Midtown and not really be in the suburbs, even though there's probably more traction there. And finally, we came upon Atria, loved the place. So also, people have this idea about the way Goa looks. It's open, natural light, lots of greenery. Where do you find places like that in Bombay? So when I started looking around, I'm like, there was no way that I was going to find something that complemented or looked remotely like, Goa. But Atria, with all the natural light, with the high
Yes.
ceiling, we got the ground floor, we had sunlight, and just so happened that we had a green patch right opposite, where the flyover is.
Yes.
All boxes seem to be ticked, and that's how, Mustard in Bombay was born.
And I must say, sorry to interject, but one was that, yeah, it's not the suburbs, and I'm in Bandra where it is thing, but the fact is that it was at the, you just get out of the sea link and it was there. And whenever I passed it by, it would be always packed. And most of my visits to Mustard would normally be in the evening, but I would always feel that daytime would be different. And when I finally went there once during the time when Debjani and Madhushri were doing their festival, and I insisted that time, I said, I'm going to go there during the daytime. And it was, I mean, both are different, but that nighttime also would remind you of the casual cafes of Paris, of different parts of Spain, the bars, the light music, the space to walk around,
Yeah.
which is so not Bombay. Yes.
So yeah, so that's how Bombay came into being, and of course, I think a lot of success of Mustard is to the fact that both our chefs, we had them with us right through the journey. It's not as if they curated the menu and we, paid them one-off fees and then they were off, because we knew for us to, really reach or keep doing things that we wanted to do, that we needed them, as part of the journey. So they would come every month, edit, audit, add to the menu or delete or whatever, So when Bombay was going to start, I'm like, it just became the natural thing that they would both curate the menu. We gave them the brief that this is a deeper market, we'll need to up the game. And it would have to be a little different from what the offering was in Goa. And sure, like in Goa, we really couldn't do things like duck and rabbit and, hilsa, because it's not such a deep market.
Procurement.
Yeah, procurement, even the number of people who come. So we had such a wide canvas in Bombay. We could do just what we wanted, and we really had fun curating the menu, doing trials for 2 3 months. So yeah, and it
Yeah,
was
in fact, I want to ask you something that so Bombay opened when we are in 21 in 18
August 18th.
August 18th. So I got it right. So if I take the period of 18 to 20, which is when it was really functional, beginning 20 and then the pandemic. So in a course of a year and a half, Mustard Mumbai, not so much I think Goa, but I think Mustard Mumbai had really taken the restaurant industry by storm within like a year and a half of its existence. It was winning at restaurant awards, some of which I was a jury member of. So I would see that, some awards it would win. Sometimes it would be like a close second or third and competing against like established restaurants with big chef names or big hospitality groups behind them. It got written about favorably. Like I said, I mean, the biggest thing is that it was always packed. So, any gut feel or analysis which both of you have done as to what you think went right for Mustard?
So, Kalyan, I want to take the opportunity to say that I think
Yes, Shilpa.
the foundation on which we built Mustard was very strong. I mean, the truth is that, in 2015, April, when we launched Mustard in Goa, between then and when we went to Bombay, or even today, there's nobody in the country done food with the same approach that we have, right? I mean, bringing two completely diverse cuisines together. I think it all boils down, as an entrepreneur, having built various businesses, I know that the strength of the value proposition is really what makes or breaks, as a business. And the fact that, we curated a concept which lent itself so much to talking to, which needs food, which, was done with pretentious, fancy gimmick. People were looking for flavors, people were looking for authentic stories.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
We've been having a lot of internet issues, but we are back. And Shilpa was talking about the entire proposition behind Mustard and what made it unique. Over to you.
Yes, Kalyan. So what I was saying is that the foundation on which, the whole concept was built was very, very unique. So the point is that if you have to be standing out amongst the crowd, if you have to, hold your own in a very, very competitive, cutthroat, ruthless space, you've got to stand for something that no one else does. And I think that has been the single most, unique reason why Mustard managed to gather the kind of following that it did, and rise to being in Bombay's top 10 within 15 months of launch. So the
I
whole
think
approach
India.
to not let
I
one,
think India,
yeah.
not just
Well, we were
Bombay.
number 28 all India, and
Yeah,
in Bombay's top 10.
you're going by the Condé
But
Nast list.
we stuck to our guns about what it is that we were going to stand for and what it is that we were going to do, and there was no question of diluting or walking down the fusion path where a Bengali version of what was originally French, or a French version of what was originally Bengali. No, they were two completely distinct menus, and then they had to be very balanced in terms of flavors, because the Indian approach to eating out is also being able to reach across, out across the table to share what somebody
Hmm.
else is eating, right? So there was a lot of thought that went into curating menus where no one flavor would kind of throw the other one off. And all of this, I mean, I think this kind of attention to detail and a very dogged focus on just being unpretentious and very, very honest about the food that we were doing. And then, of course, the whole novelty in terms of approach to bringing other cuisines, right? Every time we ran a festival, the menu that we curated for the festival had the making of a standalone restaurant.
Yeah, in
It
fact,
was extremely,
sorry to interject. In fact, I wanted to ask you about that, in fact, next.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
in a sense, you had a bit of your own foodocracy for her thing going on, because you did all these festivals. And I think most of them, apart from once a gentleman who was doing the non-veg side of the Punjabi thing were all women. Many of them were home chefs.
Yeah, he did
And
Kashmiri. Yeah, yeah.
no, but
He did
remember
Kashmiri
Sherry?
food.
There was
Yeah.
a Punjabi thing where Sherry was doing part,
Yeah,
and someone was doing the
Amritsar.
Amritsar. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. We got, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But there were a lot of women you give platforms to, people who are home chefs. I remember Madhushri and Devjani. Then there was someone who did, I
Kashmiri
think, of
Naag, there was
Kerala,
Prima Korean.
Kashmir Nath
Yeah,
of
yeah,
Assam,
yeah.
Primokurium, and all that. And of course, there was Pritha at the start, and then later also with Ananya. So you work with a lot of women and a lot of people who are not formal chefs. Was this a conscious call behind of the two of you, or did it just happen naturally?
It was a conscious call. I mean, the whole approach at Mustard has always been home style. So we wanted to be able to bring a home style approach to, Mallu food when we were doing a festival around Onam, or a home style approach to Assamese food around Bihu. And yeah, I mean, the point is that we didn't want to work with um, names which were associated with five-star hotels any which ways, because to our minds also there's a commercial approach to food,
Yes.
and then there is this very uh, purist, honest home style approach. And well, all these conversations that we had with, whether it was Kashmiri, whether it was Prima, whether it was Sri Bala, who did our last
Oh yeah,
festival,
I was there.
yeah,
Oh, I
yeah,
remember that
yeah,
because a baby
yeah,
loaf, our cat, had just started visiting us then, and
yeah,
I remember the
yeah.
food had just been served, and suddenly I get a call from Kainaz, my wife, saying that at that time we used to call him Maharani. We thought she was a her, that she'd come into the house looking for me and jumped on her, on Kainaz's lap, and she wasn't comfortable with the cat. So she said, "Eat quickly and come." So I was like, "Okay, I'm going to eat quickly." And I think with the main courses that come, and I ran after that. But I remember that. I remember that.
So yeah, I mean, the whole point was that these were people who were bringing a very, very refreshing approach to doing food, doing regional food the way we were used to doing it. So whether it was Punjabi food, which Poonam and I have both grown up eating, I mean, to be able to do aloo badi and kadi chawal, is not namak ajwain ka parantha, is not the kind of stuff you can eat anywhere except in a Punjabi home, right? People were completely blown away with our approach to the menus, and I mean, Poonam and I can really go on and on about how we felt every festival lent itself to a menu which had the making of a standalone
Yes.
restaurant. I mean, so we and Kalyan, our whole objective was really to become the voice of regional cuisine in the country. I mean,
Hmm. We had
Bengali and
discussed that. I
French.
remember you
Yeah,
once
yeah,
telling me that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
So
again, a bit ahead
Bengali
of
and
its
French
time.
is just, yeah,
Again, a bit ahead of its
yeah,
time.
which, yeah, but ahead of its time also means that it gives people an opportunity to sit up and take notice of you.
Yes.
Otherwise,
Yes.
look, we're two crazy entrepreneurs, right? Not even chefs, to break into a space which is so tightly held by well-known chefs.
Yeah. It's a
It's not an
click out there.
easy, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's not an easy leap of faith to take. But when you do, then you just have to go the whole hog. Then there's no shortcut. You can't say, okay, but I'll try and cut corners here because it doesn't make commercial sense. And yeah, I think we enjoyed every one of those. Punam?
Yeah, one of my favorites was, the undivided plate that we did during Independence Day in August with Sherry. So it's
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking of.
Yeah,
Yes.
so it's food that traveled from Pakistan into India, and how various communities and cultures brought in that food to the country, like what the Sindhis got in, what the Marwaris got in. And that was so interesting. So it wasn't multi cuisine, it wasn't as it was Sindhi and Marwari and Gujarati, but it's literally what the food, the way it traveled. And the similarities, between the two countries before partition. And that was really nice. And to be
And sorry, sorry, yeah. Go ahead.
the new generation, to our own kids, to introduce it,
Yes.
to tell them about the legacy, the heritage that we have. And for us, that's so critical, you know.
No, and what I was thinking was that look at what you've started. Like I don't know over the last few months whether you've had a chance to sit back and just think about it. But now that you're saying this, and I've been a part of this in the sense that, as in on the other side of the table, eating in many of these festivals. I remember there was Nimki Makha in from Devjani's thing, and Nimki is the name of our younger kitten. But I'm saying that look at what you've started. I mean, you gave a platform to these wonderful people who are writers, bloggers, but who are home chefs and perhaps who'd never worked in a commercial thing too well. And you then gave them the confidence, I feel, that this thing and things started churning in their mind. And because they had that one festival with you, and then they went on and you moved along. But look at what you've started. Because first of all, Sherry has very recently started Kanak in Mumbai and Bandra actually, Cloud Kitchen, where she's doing food from Undivided Punjab, and really excellent food. Madhushri and Debjani both, especially in the beginning of the lockdown, and they both, all three of them have been speakers here. They started their own lockdown initiatives, and in fact, home chef initiatives, and Debjani didn't speak of it at that time, but a lot of that she then used to fund social initiatives, which she didn't talk about when she was actually talking about her home chef thing, but she did that quietly. Then Kashmiri Nath, I mean, I interviewed her here as well, and she said that during the lockdown she didn't know what to do, and she started her home chef enterprise. And then I think for the last 1 or 2 months, she's doing some magnificent work in COVID meals. Then I sometimes read about Prima Kurian from Pritha in Gurgaon and what she's doing. I know that Shriwala is doing stuff. So in a way, like Mustard was actually a lab and a movement, which I don't know. Sometimes you perhaps need someone from the outside to tell you. And honestly, it didn't strike me till we got talking right now on this. So I wanted to ask you about that. But I think that the genesis of a lot of the journeys which these folks have taken actually started in Mustard, and it's in some way it's something to feel very proud about.
Yeah. Now that you say it,
Well,
yes.
Now that you say it, right? Even
Kalyan,
it's starting
nothing gives us more joy than enabling another woman entrepreneur. I mean, I've been in this space. I do a lot of mentoring outside of my workspace.
Yes.
I mentor women, entrepreneurs in different fields. And yeah, I mean, I've just felt that, women are far more sincere in their approach to, businesses, and are just, willing to enlist the support and help of others. What you probably haven't picked up is that just before lockdown got announced in Goa, we did a chart festival in Goa, again with a woman, home chef. I mean, she also does some little party caterings in Bangalore, but she came and did a whole street food festival in at Mustard in Goa, which was like something that Goa had never seen. To be able to eat fresh jalebis and puchkas and jhalmuri, the way people are used to having it in Calcutta, or
Who's
tikkis,
this?
was
Who's this?
just something else. Yeah, her name is Anshu Jhunjhunwala from Bangalore. Very happy to introduce you to her if you want to have a conversation with her at some point. But I mean, I'd met her at an event in Bangalore, and one thing led to another, and I invited her, and she said, "Look, I'm just going to come. I have followed your story with Mustard, and I have huge amount of regard and respect for what you ladies have been able to build. Just tell me when you want me, and I'll be there." It was great. I mean, there's so much to do. So for every one Kashmiri and Sherry and Shriwala that we've met, I'm sure there are many others who are just waiting to be discovered, and we'd love to be able to find a way to give them a platform.
Yeah, I'm sure you will, and also like you said, I mean the both of you yourselves. I mean, the restaurant industry, whether it's the chefs or the promoters, which in a sense you are, is very male driven. And if you look at what you've created, especially the Mumbai property, I mean, I want people to realize this because not everyone might have experienced it. That while Punam and Shilpa are both talking again and again about home style food, but it was in a very professionally run outfit in a place which was spoke of premiumness. It spoke of luxury. It spoke of an eye for detail. And yet, I mean, to me, it maybe the closest to it would be a bit of the clubs of Calcutta, which was all about aristocracy in a sense, but also about comfort. And when you're playing at that league, there's a lot of detailing which goes in, which perhaps in a street food context or a home context is not there. But the world changed, right? So the world has changed, and it wasn't in any of our controls. And what's happening now? I remember that in between Poonam started baking cakes, and suddenly out of nowhere, two lovely tea cakes reached us, and that was in the first lockdown where we were all by ourselves in our rooms and houses, and she sent it, and she said that I just started baking and I want to share with my friends. Which is a nice way of not piling up the glycemic index. But no, we are not starting something in baking. but
Yeah.
what's
Oh,
happening
Yeah.
now? Yeah, mustard is reopening, right, in some form.
that this is not a new business idea. You're not going to get a flyer tomorrow to say, please buy my cakes. Staying
No,
big.
but you guys never did that. You were not the pushy ones who would call you for a meal and say, okay, now what's are you writing about it before you finish washing your hands?
So last year, a lot of time was spent on what we should do in the sense, should we open, should we not, which way is the world going, when is it going to be the second wave. There were a lot of restaurant bodies and forums that I was part of. So there was a lot of chatter on options that were knocking in everyone's door. And depending on how deep your pockets were, you had to take a call basis that. And the other way to survive was if you got a good deal, from the landlord and from the owner, where they would go in for a revenue share. Now, this is a very, very individual decision that they have to take depending on their needs and their priorities. So there's no one size fits all that, all landlords will behave in a certain manner and all businesses will have money to reopen. So it was it was something that we needed to decide. And every month our view kept changing, because the first thing was that there's going to be no vaccine for the next 3 years. So yeah, we should shut. And then you started seeing hope that Europe was opening up. Maybe we should open. And then came October, and they said, yeah, the restaurants could open. So the thing with us, and we were in a mall, and malls weren't even allowed to do deliveries. So that's when we were completely shut and didn't know what to do. It's not as though we could go for slow batting and say, okay, I will keep the brand alive, I will keep the food alive, and we want to stand alone. So we were completely shut, and therefore it became even harder to decide when to open, if we should open. And whilst all this was happening, so the first thing was we thought, okay, maybe between Goa and Bombay, we should keep Bombay alive because the stakes were much higher, and close Goa because it's a smaller market. And when I went to Goa in October, I realized, oh my gosh, the city was buzzing. There were more people there wanting to eat out. And again, we took on the spot decision and said, no, Goa has to open. So we relocated in Goa to this lovely place in Asagao and built that place from scratch, which was a barren hill. And
I know we went to Goa and we were at the other end in the south.
Yeah, you told
And
me.
we were there just for a day or two. Yeah,
So
missed out on
with
that.
that we converted this outdoor place into this lovely, lovely restaurant, which is split over 3 levels,
Wow.
and doing extremely well. And Bombay was again a big if, what we should do. And then before we knew, the second lockdown happened, whilst we were still deciding. And in hindsight, it seemed like the best decision because to open in November and then again to shut down in April is something that, would have taken a heavy toll on us. It's not about investor money or anyone's money.
There's so
It's
many lives involved, the staff and
But the good thing is the staff stayed with us in the sense they were in touch with us. They went back to their village. In Goa, they stayed with us for 3, 4 months till the train started. And Bombay staff left in March itself on the 15th of March and said, we said, okay, we'll call you back in April. And then April just continued.
yeah.
But some of them came back to Goa later, and they all said that whenever you're open, we are with you.
Wow.
And, so a lot of them are back. We've opened the delivery kitchen in Bombay as of last week. So we have the opening team as part of this opening now.
So that's breaking news for everyone waiting. I mean, not breaking news. I think Mustard
Yeah.
Loyalists already know
So
that,
very-
but Mustard Mumbai is back with deliveries,
Yes.
and you have to go out to the site to order, right? On .pay.
So we are on .pay, we are on Thrive, we're on Swiggy. We also do direct deliveries. So
And what sort of food can one expect? And it's like a restaurant menu, like you go there, see what's available. It's not like pre-booking and all that.
No, so in Goa when we opened in December, we changed the format a little bit. We did the cafe version. So all these
Yes.
different formats is something that we were working with because it's not easy to scale up the restaurant all over the country. And when you have people asking you to open in different cities, we were working on a model that lend itself and that won't be so people centric in the sense that where I'm standing there interacting with all customers. So we were working on this mustard cafe menu where we incorporated a lot of the Bengali kati kebabs, the Calcutta biryani. We did the burgers. So all that is part of the menu now. And we saw huge demand of this in Goa, a lot of traction even now as we speak, even though it's under lockdown and we're doing deliveries. But these dishes are really popular because people also didn't want to spend too much time eating
True.
out. Whilst they wanted to go out and eat, but they were wary, they were skeptical. So the food had to be something that you could finish in 1 hour.
Oh
And
yes, like even when my Kanas and I would step out
yeah,
in between the lockdown, and we'd go only to places which we knew and were comfortable with. But even when you're there, in the back of your mind, it's always there that you want to get back.
yeah.
So it's a very good insight. Yes.
So we didn't want to do something that was so formal, which needed 2 hours of your time. The price tag came along with that. So this was, nice,
And
easy.
with Prita explaining the history of every dish, then the
Yes.
history of Bengal.
So, but we didn't want to move away from the concept. So the concept still remains the same, but it just gives us a wider platform. The fact that we could do a street food festival in Goa, something that we'd never be able to do in Bombay, in the current avatar, So
Yeah.
it allows us to work with different dishes, street foods, fast food, not fast food as in fast food, but like, for example, crepes. Crepes is something we were doing between 4 and 7 in Bombay. They
I
weren't too
remember. I
big,
remember. Yes.
yeah, but the few people who had, they loved it. Now it's
I
become
remember.
a mainstay in Goa.
Yes.
So things like that. It allowed us to work with different foods and really make them the hero and showcase them the way we wanted to. But we all, in the current menu, in the deliveries, we also have a section called the Mustard Classic. So for people who wanted the paturi and were missing that, or the grilled fish, the kosher mangshu, those are all there as well.
Super. So that's news which people would be waiting anxiously for. So that's lovely to know. And I normally sort of end by asking people at the other end that if there's any words of advice which they would like to give to people starting off. I think there are tons of words of advice which you've both shared very transparently and candidly through the interview. But still, a line from you each, Shilpa and Poonam, perhaps. Any advice on people who are figuring out how to take on these COVID times and for their businesses, especially in food. Any learning, anything which you'd want to share? Yes, Shilpa.
Okay. My advice to anybody who's starting off really, wanting to become an entrepreneur in the food space is that think of an idea which is disruptive in some form or manner, right? Which is not going to be more and more of what other people have already done. And the truth is that the world is changing. I mean, everything is changing. The way we look at food has changed. The way we consume has changed. Find a concept which you can call your own, which you can build on your own, and which has the agility of being able to just evolve and morph into whatever the time requires you to do, here and now. I mean, and what we've been able to do with Mustard Cafe is a classic example, right? How has the brand Mustard evolved into a cafe format, which just lends itself so much more to small plates, to more snacky food, without losing the essence of all that it was built on. So yeah, I mean, think of an idea which is disruptive and which you can own and call your own.
Oh, lovely. And if you think of it, Paris is the city of cafes, and Kolkata is the city of the cabins and the chai dokans and the evening addas, which are what we call cafes. So what a lovely synthesis again. And what about you, Poonam? Anything you would like to share?
For me, I think you should keep it small and simple. Um, that's that is the need of the hour. Don't think mega. And everyone has ideas. It's all about the execution, and that's what really will differentiate you, how you execute and with what speed and with what agility. So keep it small and simple, and don't let the ideas just stay in your head. Take the plunge and execute it in the best possible manner.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely fabulous. Thank you, Poonam. Thank you, Shilpa. It's been a great chat. So if you're watching it, folks, please do share it, because I think it would make a lot of sense to people to listen to this. And thank you.
Thanks, Kalyan.
We'll meet again together at some place someday. But till then, we'll chat and about food and maybe eat some of it too. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Kalyan. Thank you for having us. Okay. Bye
Absolute
bye.
pleasure.